Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. SJ&L General Contractors is licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee. This family-owned business provides mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you're in need of any of these services, you can contact them at 931-433-4660. That is 931-433-4660. If you'd like to be employed by this family-owned company, 3 W's and a dot, sjnl.com, www.sjnl.com. Lead Like the Lord. That's the title for the Heritage Christian Leadership Institute annual Church Leadership Workshop. This will take place March the 12th and is hosted on the campus of Heritage Christian University, and that is located on Hilton Drive in Florence, Alabama. The first session starts at 9 a.m. and the last discussion group will end at 2 p.m. We have special discussion groups for ladies as well as men. I will be one of the keynote speakers addressing the topic Lead Like the Lord, and also be doing a class on conflict resolution. The other speakers include Terry Wallace, Rosemary Snodgrass, Caleb Sampson, Chad Landman, and Kirk Brothers. After the day ends, Dr. Kirk Brothers will be signing his new book, Lead Like the Lord. Lunch is provided, so all attendees please register so we can have a head count for lunch. Email Melissa McFerrin at presoffice@hcu.edu. That is pres, P-R-E-S, office at hcu.edu. Heritage Christian University and the Heritage Christian Leadership Institute is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I was working the concession stand for the Madison County Lady Tigers. We were doing our part as proud parents and loyal supporters. Now, the following could be deemed as a volleyball rant, but let me just go ahead and say it. You see, as a parent of a volleyball player, you're asked to spend money. You help pay for buses, refs, uniforms. We sell signs. We buy signs. We buy T-shirts. We pay for food. We make food. We deliver food. We help drive players to the games. We help drive players home from the games. We serve as lines judges, statisticians, libero trackers, scorekeepers, and then we pay admission to get into the games. Most of it you don't mind, but some of it you think there's a plot to it. I think they asked me to be a line judge to silence me. You see, my real interest in volleyball started when Jackie started being a coach and trying to be a good spouse. I would go and watch her coach, and I didn't realize what volleyball etiquette was back in those days. And I would sit high in the bleachers and I would dog bark. I get kind of rowdy, and you'd wait and time it. And when somebody would make a perfect set just before the player would hit the ball, you scream as loud as you can, boom, so that it would shock everybody in the building. I remember the first game I attended, Jackie bounced up the bleachers and folded her little hands and said, "Honey, volleyball is a polite sport. You can't act like that here. They may throw you out." I laughed and said, "They may ask me to leave, but they won't throw me out." And then I started doing the parenting thing. Lonnie Beth was playing ball at Central as a middle school student, and I started the Rowdy Dad Squad. I even made T-shirts for us dads that would sit up high in the corner and create chaos. And that's about the time they started asking me to be a line judge. They put me on the floor to silence me. The concession stand, probably not a bad deal as much as I make it. The paying admission after all the money I'd already paid and all the things already done, that used to be kind of a bone of contention. You know, we were playing a team, and actually I think it was in Gunnersville, and I think they're the Bobcats or the Wildcats or the Gully Cats or something like that. But you know, you go in there and they charged you, and their admission was higher than our admission was. So, you know, here we've driven all the way to Gunnersville and had to pay to get in the gym to watch our own children play volleyball. And I'm sitting in the gym, and I noticed they had these shirts on, the girls from Gunnersville, that said Cats. big bold letters, and in the middle of the A was a silhouette of a girl setting a volleyball. And I recognized the silhouette and I recognized the girl. It was a drawing I'd done of Shauna Brown and had used it on a T-shirt I'd made for a volleyball club that Lonnie Beth had played for. And you can imagine my chagrin of sitting in a gymnasium and seeing people wear shirts with my artwork on it that they had neither right nor paid for the right to use. And so I walked back out to the front door to their concession stand and said, hey, I'd like my $5 back. They said, why? I said, because you're using my T-shirt artwork and you don't have permission to do that. So either I get my $5 back or everybody turns in their T-shirts. The little girl was wide-eyed and speechless. And then I chuckled and said, I was flattered to see my T-shirt artwork on somebody else. And she explained that the design had come from one of the parents who had a shirt with that on it. And they just basically did some cut and paste anyway. My love-hate relationship with what parents were required to do involved all the money you spend and all the time you spend, and then you still have to pay to get in your own game. And then you get banished to the concession stand? Behold, I hyperbolize. On this lovely fall afternoon, we had volleyball inside and tater tot cheerleaders on the outside. Tater tots is what Lonnie Beth called those ultra small peewee football players whose shoulder pads are wider than the little players' legs are long. She actually has a tater tot football player now. Gunner just finished his second season of football. Those little football players come with the little cheerleaders. And so you have these little boys running around, these oversized football suits, but you also have these little bitty tiny girls in their cheerleader outfits. And we called the Tater Tot cheerleaders because they were the Tater Tot football players back when Lonnie Beth was in school. A steady stream of bouncy little bright-eyed ponytail girls kept coming up to the counter asking for prices of the concession stand and ordering snacks. Now, the concession stand was there for the volleyball team, but the little football team and the little cheerleading team outside was taking full advantage that there was food available. I had served a line of such little patrons, and the last little girl in line peeked over the counter, standing on her little tippy toes, and announced, 1 bag of popcorn. And then she promptly placed 14 American cents on the counter. She was about 86 cents short from the price of popcorn, but she didn't know it. She dropped her 14 cents on the counter like she was presenting me with the Hope Diamond. She had no clue that her meager resources were not adequate for the purchase. And unless all these years later she reads this article or hears this podcast and recognizes her story, she'll never even know it. I handed her a bag of popcorn and she bounced out the door. I really wanted to use this story as a parallel to John 8. A woman in John chapter 8 is convicted of a sin and does not have to pay the price for it. But the more I thought about it, I didn't want to dwell on the price owed and the price paid as much as I wanted to talk about the confidence of the little girl who presented her 14 cents. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want you to think that I'm talking about some false sense of worth. And I'm not talking about some elevated or inflated sense of who we are. But I'm just talking about her confidence and her boldness. In her little mind, she wanted popcorn. And she knew she needed money to get popcorn. And even though she couldn't count it, she knew she had money. To her, it was all she needed to approach the counter and get the popcorn. And even though it was woefully inadequate, she presented those 14 cents like she had given me the keys to a Mercedes. and traded it for a bag of popcorn. If you read the New Testament book of the book of Hebrews, it talks about our ability to approach God's throne with boldness. And as we approach his throne with boldness, we receive grace and mercy in our time of need. God says that he has provided the resources for us to be able to approach the grace and mercy concession stand and boldly place the request for the things we need, and we can't pay for it. In fact, the resources we possess are woefully inadequate, but the resources he has provided fill in the gap between what we have, what we need, and what it actually cost. What Jesus did on the cross satisfies our debt. We owed for sin, and Jesus died to pay for that debt. In satisfying the penalty for sin, he also provided grace and mercy and salvation and redemption and forgiveness, reconciliation, justification, and fulfilled all that was required by the law. Because of his power, we have power. Because of his resurrection, we have resurrection. Because of his death, we have life. And because of his payment, we can approach the concession stand with boldness. And without having to worry about if what we have is enough, we can just simply approach and ask.